You are the most documented human being in the history of civilization. Every movement you make, every preference you reveal, every moment of hesitation before a purchase, every search you abandon halfway through, every message you type and delete before sending. All of it is recorded, stored, analyzed, and sold. Not by a government, not by a surveillance state, by companies whose services you chose to use, whose terms you agreed to, and whose value you genuinely receive. You are being watched more thoroughly than any human being in any authoritarian regime in history. And you are paying for the privilege with your attention, your behavior, and your time. And the paradox at the center of all of this is not that it happens. It is that it could not happen without your active, continuous, voluntary participation. Welcome to K-Missoura, the channel that exists to show you how money and power actually work. Not the version that makes you feel safe, the version that's already running. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how the data economy works as a single, interconnected mechanism, not as a collection of separate companies doing separate things, but as a system with a logic so coherent and so elegant that once you see it whole, you cannot unsee it. Let's pull it apart from the beginning. It starts with a transaction that doesn't feel like a transaction. You open an app, you search for something, you like a post, you linger on a video for 11 seconds before scrolling past. None of these feel like exchanges. They feel like behavior, private, inconsequential, ephemeral. The thought that crosses your mind at 2 a.m. when you search for something you would never say out loud feels, in that moment, like a thought. It does not feel like data. It does not feel like something with monetary value. It does not feel like something you are giving to anyone. This is the first and most fundamental mechanism in the entire system, the invisibility of the transaction. Every other economy in human history has involved an exchange that both parties recognized as an exchange. You give money, you receive goods. The terms are visible. The value is understood by both sides. The data economy inverted this entirely. You give behavior, you receive a service. The terms are buried in a document no one reads. And the value, the actual monetary value of what you gave, is understood by only one side of the transaction. The average American generates approximately 1.7 megabytes of data every second of every day. Across a year, across a lifetime, across the behavior of hundreds of millions of people simultaneously, this adds up to something that has been called the new oil. But the oil analogy understates it in one critical way. Oil has to be extracted. Data is delivered. You don't extract it from people. People produce it continuously, automatically, as a byproduct of living a modern life. And the infrastructure to collect it was built, piece by piece, inside products people were genuinely happy to use. This is the second mechanism. The product is the collection infrastructure. Facebook did not build a surveillance system and then ask people to use it. It built a social network, something that fulfilled a genuine and profound human need, the need to maintain relationships across distance, to be seen, to belong. And the surveillance was the business model underneath it. Instagram did not build a data harvesting tool. It built a platform for self-expression and aesthetic curation that tapped into something deep in human psychology, the desire to construct and share an identity. The data collection was structural, not visible, not the point from the user's perspective, and absolutely the point from the company's. The genius of this mechanism is that it aligns the interests of the user and the platform at the surface level while diverging them at the structural level. The user wants connection. The platform provides connection. The platform also wants data. The user produces data as an automatic consequence of seeking connection. Nobody is lying. Nobody is forcing anyone. The system simply works in a way that extracts maximum value from one party while appearing to serve them completely. Now here is where the mechanism becomes something more than a business story. Here is where it becomes a human one. In 2012, Facebook ran an experiment. It altered the news feeds of approximately 700,000 users, without their knowledge and without additional consent, to show some users more positive content and others more negative content. It then measured whether the emotional content of those users' subsequent posts changed in response. It did. Users shown more negative content produced more negative posts. Users shown more positive content produced more positive posts. The experiment demonstrated conclusively that the algorithmic curation of a social media feed could measurably alter the emotional state of a human being, and that this alteration happened without the person's awareness that anything unusual was occurring. The paper documenting this experiment was published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2014. The reaction was significant. Ethicists, psychologists, and regulators raised serious concerns about the use of unwitting users as experimental subjects. Facebook apologized for the communication around the study. And then the underlying capability, the ability to algorithmically alter emotional states through content selection, continued to be used because it is not incidental to the business model. It is the business model. An emotionally engaged user is a user who spends more time on the platform. More time on the platform means more data. More data means more precise targeting. More precise targeting means higher advertising rates. The mechanism that moves your emotions is the same mechanism that generates revenue. This is the third mechanism, and the most important one. Attention is the product, emotion is the amplifier, and you are the factory. The advertising industry has always understood that attention precedes purchase. You cannot sell to someone who is not paying attention. What the data economy discovered, and what makes it structurally different from every previous form of advertising, is that attention can be engineered with a precision that was previously impossible. A billboard reaches everyone who drives past it. A television commercial reaches everyone watching that channel. A targeted digital advertisement reaches the specific person who searched for a related term 4 days ago, whose purchase history suggests they are in a buying cycle, whose location data shows they drove past a competitor's store last week, and whose behavioral profile indicates they respond better to scarcity messaging than to value messaging. The same product, infinitely more precise delivery, dramatically higher conversion rate, exponentially higher value per advertising dollar. The data that makes this precision possible came from you. It came from the searches you ran when you were curious. It came from the purchases you made when you were happy or sad or bored. It came from the locations you visited, logged automatically by the device in your pocket. It came from the conversations you had, analyzed not for content, but for behavioral patterns. It came from the questions you asked at 3 a.m. that you would never ask out loud. All of it flowing, continuously, into systems that know you, in certain measurable dimensions, better than you know yourself. There is a researcher at the University of Cambridge who demonstrated that with sufficient Facebook likes, a machine learning model could predict a person's political views, religious beliefs, relationship status, intelligence level, and whether their parents divorced before they turned 21, more accurately than the person's friends, family, and in some cases, the person themselves could predict. The data you produced while looking at cat videos and posting birthday messages contained, embedded within its patterns, a profile of your psychology that you had never consciously created and had no idea existed. Now follow this data one step further in the mechanism, because most people understand that Facebook and Google use data to sell advertising. What most people don't understand is what happens to data after it leaves those platforms. Data brokers are the invisible middle layer of the data economy. They are companies whose entire business is the acquisition, aggregation, and resale of personal data. And unlike the platforms you've heard of, they have no consumer-facing product. You have never downloaded a data broker's app. You have never agreed to their terms of service in any meaningful sense. You have never, in most cases, heard their names. Companies like Axiom, Experian, LexisNexis, and CoreLogic maintain profiles on hundreds of millions of individuals. Profiles that combine data from social media, purchase history, public records, location tracking, app usage, loyalty programs, and dozens of other sources into a single composite picture of who you are, what you do, and what you are likely to do next. This data is sold to insurance companies who use it to price your premiums. It is sold to employers who use it in hiring decisions. It is sold to financial institutions who use it in credit assessments. It is sold to political campaigns who use it to craft messages designed to move you toward a specific decision. It is sold to landlords who use it in tenant screening. And it is sold to other data brokers who combine it with their own data sets and sell it again. Your data does not have a single owner. It has a supply chain. And at every point in that supply chain, someone is extracting value from information that originated in your behavior. Behavior you produced while trying to find a restaurant, or connect with a friend, or understand something that confused you. The human dimension of this mechanism is not abstract. It shows up in specific, concrete moments in specific people's lives. It shows up in the person who, after researching a medical condition online, begins receiving targeted advertisements for that condition's treatments, before they have told anyone about their diagnosis. It shows up in the person who, after a period of financial difficulty, finds that their credit options have narrowed in ways they cannot explain and cannot appeal, because the inputs to the decision are proprietary and invisible. It shows up in the teenager whose algorithmic feed, optimized for engagement, has learned that content-producing anxiety keeps her on the platform longer than content that makes her feel good, and has adjusted accordingly without anyone at the company making a conscious decision to harm her. None of this requires malicious intent. That is perhaps the most important thing to understand about this mechanism. The engineers who built these systems were largely trying to build useful products. The executives who monetized them were operating within legal frameworks and market incentives that rewarded what they did. The advertisers who bought the targeting were trying to reach customers efficiently. The data brokers who aggregated and sold the profiles were operating a legal business in an under-regulated space. The system produces outcomes that, viewed in aggregate, raise profound questions about privacy, autonomy, and the right to control information about oneself. And it produces those outcomes not through conspiracy, but through the perfectly rational operation of its own logic. This is what makes it so difficult to change and so important to understand. You cannot fix a system you do not understand. And the data economy has been specifically, not conspiratorially, but structurally, designed to be opaque to the people it processes. The terms of service are long because they are not meant to be read. The data flows are complex because complexity is a barrier to scrutiny. The value exchange is invisible because invisibility is a precondition for the transaction occurring at all. If every user of every platform could see in real time exactly what data was being collected, exactly how it was being used, and exactly how much money was being made from it, the behavioral economics of the system would change overnight. You are worth, depending on your demographic profile and behavioral history, somewhere between a few dollars and several $100s per year to the platforms that hold your data. That number is not large. Individually, it is almost insultingly small, given what is extracted in return, but multiplied by hundreds of millions of users, sustained over years, compounding as the data becomes more complete and the models become more accurate. It becomes the foundation of some of the largest market capitalizations in the history of human enterprise. Google's parent company Alphabet is worth over $2 trillion. Meta is worth over $1 trillion. The raw material that built both of those valuations was produced by human beings who were looking for directions, or trying to stay in touch with people they love, or trying to understand something that confused them. The transaction happened. It happens every day, billions of times. The terms were never clearly stated, and the product that was sold was something most of the people who produced it still do not fully understand they gave away. That is not a comfortable place to end. But comfort was never the purpose of this channel. What I want you to take from this video is not outrage. Outrage without understanding changes nothing. What I want you to take is the ability to see the mechanism clearly, because once you see it clearly, you start to ask different questions, not just about your privacy, but about value, about what your attention is worth, about what it means that the most intimate data about your psychology, your health, your fears, and your desires is owned by entities whose interests are not aligned with yours, processed by systems you cannot audit, and sold to parties you will never know. These are not technical questions, they are human ones, and the fact that they are rarely asked in those terms is itself part of the mechanism. Subscribe if you haven't yet, it's free, and it's how you make sure these videos keep reaching you without you having to go looking for them. The truth was always there, nobody taught you where to look. I'm Kay Mazora. See you in the next one.